Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions Tuesday. I think sometime in May. Still on lockdown, day 41 of the podcast in a row. Yes, glutton for punishment, but back with me, putting a smile on my face is Sharon, Evan, and of course Kian, Golzari. This week we are going to be talking. What are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about today inspections and quality control. And Kian, what else are we speaking about?
Can you hear us, Kian?
So basically, inspections, quality control.
Yeah. Yeah, so what we're going to do, to break it down, I'm going to talk about arranging your pre-shipment inspection. Most people know how to do this, but there's a bit of an art to it as well. AQL and returns, testing your samples to industry for legal standards, NDAs, NNNs, and then obviously look at the payment protection, which is really important at the moment with the current climate with some of these factories going down, right? Even though if you've been working with them for years. So without further ado, Sharon, do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself while I share to the groups? And then we'll move on to Kian.
Yes, so my name is Sharon Evan, and I need to get a flow of who I am. So my name is Sharon Evan, and I sell at Amazon, and I sell off of Amazon, and I do YouTube, and I have a Facebook group called Amazon FBA Alphas, and I do one-on-one coaching, and that's me.
Excellent. And Kian?
Cool. I'm in a similar situation as Sharon. I've got a Facebook group, Sourcing with Kian, as you can see here. And also, living and working in China for the past 10 years, specialize in manufacturing, product development, work with brands on Amazon, but also off of Amazon, retailers' licenses like the NBA, Olympics, stuff like that. And just enjoying this time during quarantine and looking forward to another great episode with yourself, Danny and Sharon.
Excellent. So you just used the words enjoying your time in quarantine.
I am actually, it's pretty weird to say. No, that's a good point. But it feels weird to say that I'm actually really enjoying this time. Obviously, there's great things going on in the world, but for me personally, I like it. It's going good. I've enjoyed this time at home and focus on the right things.
The focus and getting shit done, where you're not out and distracted and stuff like that. You're actually being super productive in this time, is what you're saying. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Hello, guys. Owen's here as well, says hi. Juan's here. Good morning, masters. I think he's talking about you two. Sahal's here. Best part of the day. Thank you, Sahal. Andrew here. Hello, gents and lady. And Andrew again. Good to see you soon. In the feed, we've got Rowan, Cindy's here. Lee Chapman, Michael's here as well. Okay, so let's start getting into things. Let's take it right back from the top. Everyone knows how to organize a pre-shipment inspection, but a lot of people don't bother and they just sling their products into Amazon after spending an absolute fortune on stock and then wonder why they get returns and complaints on their reviews. So who wants to start with this one?
Kian, what do you want to do? I don't mind starting.
Sure.
It's actually funny though that you're saying that, Danny, because in my experience, a lot of sellers don't get inspections.
Exactly.
A lot of sellers don't get inspections and they don't understand the repercussions of it and how much money it's actually going to cost you if there is, I don't have another word for it apart from if there's a fuck up.
Yeah.
So it's something that is crucial, and I'm going to, because Kian and I both have so much knowledge on the subject, so I'll talk Kian more about the Amazon side of it, and I'll let you speak about because we could both speak about the same thing. So
sure.
Kian will talk about the inspection side of it, and I'll talk about the Amazon side of it as well. So what people also need to understand is that once your product hits Amazon, and I'm going to give you something that's happened to me in the past as well. You can't remove that until it has been spread amongst all of the Amazon warehouses, and only then can you create a removal order. So something that happened to me is, the first thing I will say is that every single one of your shipments, no matter how long you have been working with a supplier, whether you've got 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, it doesn't matter how much you trust them, you should always have an inspection done before the cargo leaves their warehouse. I once needed to get a product in ASAP. like really, really quickly. I didn't want to go out of stock. It was a best-selling product. And we had, I think it was 5,000 units on the way. I have a whole like YouTube video about it on my YouTube. And I, for the first time ever, did not get an inspection done, and I had it air expressed. Now, getting an inspection done would have delayed this by 1 day, would have delayed it by 24 hours. I didn't do it. And I am so, so lucky that I have such an amazing relationship with the supplier. And she sent me a WeChat and she said, Sharon, I'm really, really sorry. The adhesive on this specific product is not good. Now, I don't know if you've ever needed to stop a shipment from arriving to Amazon when it's DHL courier, but it is almost impossible. It is almost impossible to change the address of the final destination. So I found myself in a situation where I've got 5,000 units of a product being sent to Amazon that's faulty, and it's going to get me like heaps of 1-star reviews, and it could like stuff up the entire listing. I was very, very, very lucky that I used a freight forwarder, so I was able to stop it. But I did get one box that did still arrive into Amazon. But just so people understand, had that arrived at Amazon, I would have needed to wait until all of the 5,000 units would have been spread amongst all of the Amazon's warehouses, which could have even taken 28 days. And only then would I have been able to create a removal order, which would have cost me 50 cents per unit. So this is something that I've been through myself, and it is absolutely crucial, and people need to understand how it can affect your Amazon specifically. It's just not worth it.
No, I agree.
In any way.
I mean, you think about it, you can pay as low as 188 a day.
180.
Per man. Yeah, 180 up to 300. It's fuck all. It's pittance when you're putting down 15, 20, 30 plus thousands. And the fucking mess to clear that up for 6 months after, the bullshit you have to go with your factory. I don't understand how people can that's just mindless to not spend that money.
It's usually between $180 to $300 per manpower day, usually. Because sometimes if you've got a lot of, you may need more than one. Now, just before we move on to Kian, I have an example of a product here because I speak about it in the YouTube video. So about 2 years ago, we almost... Everyone's going to laugh because it's such a terrible product. We almost added the jade rollers to our beauty brand. And I've got a jade roller here because it was a sample that I was sent. And I specifically always let my suppliers know beforehand when I'm getting quotes. I always let them know that I'm going to have a third-party inspection done. So I let them know that I'm going to have, it's part of the thing that they know I'm going to get a third-party inspection done. And no one, apart from one supplier, agreed to let me have a third-party inspection come in. And I didn't really know the product that well at the time. It was just when jade rollers became like a thing, like 2 years ago. And I later realized it was because the jade roller here is made out of jade, so it was continuously being sent, like it was breaking on the way there. But that, to me, I ended up not even going into that product at the time. Part of that reason was because of the quality control. But that is something that, like, to me, it's a make or break whether I get into a work with a company as well. Yeah. Kian, let's move on to you. You've got heaps of stuff to say too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think with pre-shipment inspections, right, it's very, very important to let your supplier know before you start the order process, before you confirm the order, you have to let them know that you will be arranging pre-shipment inspections, because once they know that an inspection will happen, well, now they're going to start to manufacture it to a high standard because they know it's going to be checked. I mean, they may have been making it to a high standard anyway, but now they're definitely going to have a lot more attention on it to make sure that it can pass an inspection. So that's just a very good thing to do. Even if you do or don't go for the inspection, now I highly recommend that you inspect every single order, because mistakes can happen, even though like it's not deliberate. Sometimes mistakes just generally happen, and that's the whole purpose of pre-shipment inspections, that they pick these things up. But in terms of like paying for the inspection, you should always pay for the inspection. But then if the inspection fails, then the supplier pays for the re-inspection. That's generally how it goes. So don't worry that, oh, what if it fails and I have to pay for 3 or 4 inspections? No, you only pay for the first one. And if it fails, the supplier pays for it after that. And also, like, to people who think, oh, well, what if this inspection is too expensive? Consider the value of the order versus the cost of the actual inspection. And not only the value of the order, of the price that you're paying the supplier, but the value of the goods that you're getting on the retail price. Because you might pay your supplier $25 for a product, but you might retail it at 100. But now you can't get that $100 sale because you didn't pay for that $180 inspection, but you've got 1,000 of those $100 products. You know what I mean? So just think about it. It's one unit basically is a cost for that particular inspection. So I've been burnt a couple of times on inspections when I didn't do an inspection because I had very good relationships with my manufacturers, and I was like, oh, they would never screw me over. So actually we've been placing this order a few times, everything's been fine, so I don't need to do the inspection anymore. But then mistakes have happened that they weren't aware of, which has come back to bite me in the ass. For example, we were doing military boots for the UK Army, and one of the production lines used like a silver pen for like for the cutting lines of the leather, and normally they use a different color pen, or they could wipe it off or something like that. This time it didn't wipe off, and then we got like 20,000 boots arriving in the UK with silver marks on them, and I'm like, what the hell is this? But there was no inspection. But an inspection would have picked it up immediately and they would have polished it at the factory. Instead, we had to open up all the boxes in our warehouse in the UK, polish all the boots, and you can imagine the astronomical cost of that compared to just if we got an inspection done in China. Now, what was quite cool is when I lived in China for a few years, I actually went and inspected the orders myself, and I had my own checklist, just like QC companies do. And I'm like, I want to put myself through an inspection. So I learned a lot about it as well. And I learned a lot about the relationships between factories and the inspectors. Now, factories, if you have a good relationship with them, will tell you that they don't like inspections. They don't like inspectors because there's kind of like a bribe culture in China. And that's not to like scare you off to be like, oh, it only passed because it got a bribe. They'll still pass or fail your inspection if it had to, but they still also want to collect their bribe. And if they don't get a bribe, then that's when they would fail it. So it's also important to sort of understand that culture, but also know that that's just their culture and we can't change that. So just because someone's looking for a bribe doesn't mean that like you shouldn't be doing an inspection. It's just the way it goes over there, but you'll still get the accurate result on the inspection form. And what was really interesting was when I lived in China, I was like, okay, cool, let me check this out for myself. So I went to a factory that I was going to anyway, which I was placing an order for. And then I ordered the inspection from a third-party company, and I stayed in the factory. And I just said, look, if they ask who I am, just say I'm a buyer for another company. I just want to watch what they do. And the inspection was supposed to start at 10 a.m. The inspector showed up at 12 o'clock, 2 hours late. And then he said...
We're losing your audio a bit there, Kian.
He may have gone out. There he is. Kian, you back?
Oh, am I back? Oh, yeah, I'm back.
Yeah,
sorry.
You're back now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so then, okay, sorry about that. And then he said, I'm not doing this inspection until I get my lunch. So they had to order him lunch. And then, so I still got the accurate report, but the inspector was being an idiot. And that's just kind of like the culture over there. So don't get like swayed by inspector behavior.
I left my inspection company for that very reason, that I had the inspector and the factory talking about, oh, no, come back later on today. You've been traveling. And they made the arrangements between them. And then when I said, where is the report? I'd done my bollocks because I'm like, well done. You can't make those arrangements behind my back to say, I will come back later and you can leave earlier for the day because you've got to go rush off and get a train. That's unacceptable. I actually switched inspection companies because of that reason, because that for me was just way too cozy with the factory. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I actually think that it's an important subject to, like, I'm the opposite with Kian on this because Kian and I agree on most things. There's some things that we're on the opposite. Bribery in China is a huge issue when it comes to inspection companies. I speak about this on the YouTube video that I made on inspections, and it's part of the biggest issue that there is when it comes to inspection companies. And I guess this is also where Kian's probably also going to speak about why he uses certain types of companies that he uses. But bribery, when it comes to this, like in general, it's a huge issue in China, but especially these inspection companies, like to make an inspection company in China is very simple. They can just go and make any sort of random website and call themselves an inspection company and get into a million different Facebook groups and say that that's what they are. And the thing is that a lot of people that watch, like they're in these Facebook groups, they'll just see somebody, you know, who says that someone could, I'm honestly going to go like really far and say they can go and take like some random American guy's Facebook image and put that as their image and pretend like they're like some, you know, non-Chinese person from America that's living in China and call themselves an inspection company when really it's just like some random person. This kind of stuff exists. And I don't want people to start getting all scared or anything, but people need to know that this happens. Have we lost Kian?
I think we have, yeah. I'm going to say some hellos in the feed while he comes back, and then we'll return back to what you're saying there, Sharon. Jason says, interesting topic, guys. Looking forward to this, where the conversation goes. Then Elchin says, hi all, nice to see you all. Pat Taylor says, hope you guys are well. Owen says, inspection every time, period. Martin says, how do you determine what inspection should focus on? Is there a list? We'll come to that. I'll come back to you there. Michelle says, Kian, sourcing king. Maui says, hello, guys. Abdus says, hello, everyone. Facebook user, I'm not sure who this is, but we'll get to this. He says, can you guys talk about creating a contract with a factory? Is there a fill in the blank somewhere I could use? Or we've been using invoices with product specifications. So we'll get into that as well. Martin says, hello. Jessie says hello. Tiffany Hepburn is here. Good morning, everyone. Just looking in the feed. Amit's here, Khalid's here, David's here, Alex is here. Ricky has joined the feed. Loeb is here as well. Daniel's also joined. Hey, Annalise, welcome back. Sav, Claire, and Yael Cabelli, she'll be on here with me tomorrow. Let's see if we can bring Kian back into the mix. Are we there?
Kian had this issue a bit earlier today.
Yeah, he's been freezing. All right, so while we're waiting for that to kind of sort out,
I can answer some of those as well. By the way.
So where do you, Kian? We got you back.
I'm able to do multiple products on Amazon with one account. I believe I heard Sharon say that on the last call. Just curious, trying to learn. So, can I answer? Are we?
You go for that one, and then we'll bring Kian back in.
Yeah. So, hold on. Wait. How are you able to do multiple brands products on Amazon with one account? I personally have every single brand. I've got 3 brands. Each one has a separate account, and it's easier to get. I heard that you guys said that it's always been easy to get. I went through shit to do that like 2 years ago, but I had to say that it was for tax reasoning. But I know that today you're allowed to have multiple.
It's so good we split him up into 2. Look, there's 2 of him there.
Yeah.
But you can have more than one brand on one account. If you don't actually have to have like a trademark, but you can have an actual brand on one account. You can have more than one. We specifically, each one of our brands sells totally non-related products. So in the past, I don't know how it is today, because I did hear that Danny, you guys, and Yael was here, said something else. But when I made more than one account, you had to prove that they're totally separate products.
Was before August last year. But then Amazon waited 9 months to announce that you can now do this without having to ask permission and going to performance. But that has been that way since August last year. They just didn't mention it.
It's interesting because so basically what that means is if now I wanted to go make another account under a new, totally different LLC and etc., I don't have to prove that it's totally separate products. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. You haven't got to prove anything, but ideally you don't want to cross products from one account to another, because that's like cross-selling across the accounts. You'll get suspended for that. Ideally, we know there's 2 main reasons, right? You want to sell the business and tax implications. If you've got different partners on them, it's a headache, right? Dealing with any kind of a commerce payouts is an absolute ball ache to deal with, especially multi-country, multitude of VAT, etc. When you're going across network in like the UK, if you're using EFN or you're using what's the name of it? Forgot the name of it now. EFN.
I don't know what EFN is.
Your facility network. What's the one where you multi-country? EU. I'm drawing a blank now. Amazon always plugging it. When you sell in the EU on Amazon, multiple countries.
I don't sell in it.
Okay.
You
have to be registered with 7 VAT points, because he's got the 5 countries plus the 2 storage countries. It escapes me now. Penny you. That's it. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Took me out 80 steps. So if you're dealing with that and you are trying to sell products across a single account from different brands, and it just becomes a complete mess. So as you know, a separate account, each brand, each point of taxation, it just makes it.
But you don't have to have, so you don't actually have to have a different brand. You can a different account. You can have all your brands on one account. I specifically don't work in that way. But if I did start over again today and it was just me, I didn't have any partners or anything, I don't think I'd make separate accounts today. because it's not the same as it was back then.
Yeah, we just got a dozen messages. Everyone's coming, panny you. A bit of brain fog there. Yeah, sorry. Okay, where were we? So basically what it comes down to, the going back to the question there is, can I sell across multiple brands in a single account? Yes, you can.
Yes, you
but
can.
It becomes a fucking mess. So ideally you want to separate them, especially if you come to sell the business as well, and you need to sell with the account because the account's got good standing history and feedback as well. So ideally, as best as you can, keep them separate where possible.
100%. It's actually a good subject also for whoever asked that to come on your thing tomorrow, because El Kabili has a company that sells brands.
Yeah. Okay. Should we get like? There's some. There will. These guys will answer these questions later, guys. But let's stay on subject, right? Before we lost Kian to the internet, and now he's back again. We were talking pre-shipment PSIs, pre-shipment inspections. We were talking about the issues. You were talking about backhanders and stuff like that, Sharon. Let's carry on to the next stage of that, where the briberies, the backhanders and stuff. Yeah.
I was talking about the bribery.
Yeah.
Kian, you can continue if you want as well.
Sure,
so
sure.
I was saying that I just when we lost you, I was saying that there is a big issue in China when it comes to the bribery. And I said, I'm not trying to get people to be like scared of it, but it's important to know that it does exist. And that's why the company in which you work with is very, very important. That's what I just said when I lost you.
Exactly. And that was going to be my next point, is that like it's very important to work with the reputable companies that have very high standards. And you have to be mindful of like the fake inspection companies, so like don't take the cheap inspections off Alibaba or anything like that. You want to go, like I like working with companies like SGS and Intertech and BV and stuff like that, international companies which have international offices, so that if there ever is a fuck up with an inspection, well, they can then take responsibility for it and they're not going to walk away from it because they are a big company. And another thing I like to do is, when I lived in China and I used to do the inspections myself, and I would advise this to anyone who does actually go in to visit their manufacturer, is it show how hard you test the products in front of the factory managers and the factory boss if you ever go to China. Because for example, like we were doing like outdoor furniture chairs, and what I would do is I would pick up, like they would make these really expensive chairs which compact up, and then they have a carry bag, but the carry bag they used was very cheap. And but it's okay to use a cheaper bag because that's not the main purpose of the product, but it has to have very good quality stitching so it doesn't fall apart. And I wasn't happy with the stitching, so I basically grabbed the carry bag handle, threw it up and down until the stitching came off the seams. And then they were like, what are you doing? Why are you tossing this bag up and down? And I was like, well, you don't understand. Like, you think this is a furniture chair that people use in their garden, but the main purpose is people who go to music festivals buy this sort of product and they toss it around. And then when I took the chair out, I stood on the chair and I stood on the handles, jumped up and down until they snapped. And they're like, why are you jumping up and down on this chair? I'm like, because this is what people do at music festivals. So I was really going to extreme measures, but I was educating my manufacturers on how people actually use product. And as a result, this is now the standards that they need to reach. So definitely don't be shy about breaking products in front of your manufacturer just to show how hard you're willing to test it. And then they know, all right, that's the buyer which doesn't mess around. That's the guy who actually checks this all this sort of stuff. So let's make sure that his products are manufactured to the highest quality.
There's questions coming in about selecting inspection companies. It is difficult. If you can get someone who refers them, not a Facebook group, speak to another seller that uses them over and over again, that's probably going to be your best vehicle. The guy I use, Andy Church, what I like about him is that he's based in the US. I can deal with him, but he's got the Chinese team on the ground. Andy does flash inspections. He hates me talking about it because I'm just want to know whether it's going to fail or not. I don't want to wait next day and they've got the train come back, photographs, report, delivered as a PDF. If it's failed, tell me. Don't waste my fucking time for 24 to 48 hours. So he doesn't like me talking about that, but I like him and I trust him and I can have a good conversation and he can talk to people in the factory on the day. And that's the problem sometimes is when you're dealing with an inspection company, it's like, yeah, we've sent the inspector out and there's no contact between you and the inspector, which is fine because you deal with the inspection company. But then there's no contact until they've returned home. And that's the bit that annoys me because there's so much time wasted in between. So if you can get flash inspections done or get early reports to abort, because at the end of the day, you're going to pay for the inspection. You might as well kill it there and then. If it's not going to meet your AQL, just fuck it off and go, right, done for the day. This is not meeting the standards. I'm not wasting the rest of the day. And then maybe you can negotiate with the inspection company to stay on an extra day, pay them extra money and say, will you stay behind if they can make any corrections within that time period? Anyway, that's my rant over. Kian, who do you rate?
So I work with a few companies, and like I said, like kind of like the international ones. Like I like Intertech, I like SGS and BV, and BV stands for like Bueras Veristas or something like that. But sometimes like I work with the inspection company, which the retailer that I'm supplying has appointed. So sometimes you don't actually get a choice. Like if you're supplying a specific customer, they'll tell you this is the inspection company we want you to work with. But yeah, there's quite a few that I work with, but kind of like international ones. And I have worked with a couple of Chinese companies as well, but only if I've been to visit the office himself and I really myself and I know who the company are. Yeah.
For those asking, I've just posted Andy Churt's his email in the feed. Fucking God help him when this gets published. He's going to get a firebomb inbox. Yeah, but be kind to him, guys. He's a really good guy, and he's very helpful. So he's the guy that I use for inspections. Go on, sorry, Kian.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing is that's quite a common question that I get asked, like in my Facebook group as well. So I've posted quite a few links there at certain times about inspection companies to work with. But as you said, Danny, as well, I think it's much better to go off like word of mouth of friends who have used inspection companies, because there's so many going around. If you actually just do the search yourself, it's hard like to really trial and error and find the right ones. But if someone's worked with a good company and they've not had any problems, then just take their recommendation and keep it going.
And it goes back to the same problem. If you know, people like have their own perception of things, right? So you might say, someone might say, I use this inspection company and they were shit. And they weren't shit. It was just you had a shit product, shit factory. You didn't like what the report said, so you wanted to blame them. Then they get a bad name, and which is unfortunate. So it's probably best to, you know, look between the lines and not just get one piece of feedback. Go online and ask a few people. At the end of the day, bad news does travel fast, but sometimes good news does as well. So make sure you do your research. Where do you want to go next? Let's have a look.
So I use a different company, but I have in my Facebook group, in the units section of the group, an example of what an inspection report looks like. Which it's actually from 2 years ago, and their reports are even better today. And you've also got video reports today. Yeah. But yeah, it's so that people can also sort of get an understanding if there's any newbies who don't really know what a report really even looks like. And something to add to that, I think someone asked before, how do you know what to ask or something like that? What I've found over times of different types of products that I've developed is sometimes I don't necessarily always know of everything that needs to be checked. For example, I had a product once that I didn't even think that the inspection company needed to check if it smelled or not, because it didn't even make sense. And then they came back and showed, they took images and they had a video of the guy actually smelling it, and then like they wrote that it smelled toxic.
Yeah,
right?
and do you know where that comes from? It's called off-gassing. And sometimes is if you're using a certain material and that material then is cooling down and you bag it too fast, it creates an off-gas.
So the thing is that a lot of these times, especially if you're working with a good inspection company, they would have also done inspections for products like that in the past. And they also know what to check for those specific products. But of course, like, and Ken will probably be able to add to this, there are certain things that people specifically, like, you should also really know your product really well and get them to check every single thing that's very, very important to you. Especially something we should also speak about is when you have more than one supplier, because that's totally two separate inspections as well. Actually, it's actually a really important subject to speak about.
Well, the other thing that we missed off that we said when we're looking for an inspection company, you should look for one that has experience with your type of product.
With your type of product, yep.
That's very key true. As well. Yeah.
100%.
Okay, should we get into the technical side now, Kian? Let's talk about AQL. Yeah, because break that down, what that means to people that are unsure, what it means, what percentages are and stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So Sharon made a really good point about, she's got an inspection report example in her group, and that's important to understand how to read these inspection reports, because the most important thing is the AQL level, which stands for accepted quality level.
Yeah.
And that accepted quality level is like the industry standard. And you have three things. You have your minor defects, your major defects, and your critical defects. Now, on any sort of standard product, you're allowed 4% minor defects, 2.5% major defects, and 0% critical defects. And what that means, like a minor defect might just be like a scratch on the surface. It's tiny, you can't really see it, but it's minor. And 4% of your order is allowed to be like that. Major is something like the clip is the wrong color or something. It's a pretty big problem. And critical means the product doesn't work, and you're just not allowed any of those on an inspection report. So once you understand what those levels are, and when you get your inspection report, like maybe, and as long as under 4%, 2.5%, and you don't have any criticals, then it's going to pass. And sometimes you have an inspection that will fail, but it's going to fail because there was maybe 6% minor defects rather than 4%. And you're like, well, actually 6% minor is not too bad. Maybe I'll just ask them to pull those examples out of the production. Maybe I'll get a little bit of compensation from a manufacturer, and then it's good to go. So if you can understand like how to read a report, you can still act on it and you can still ship your goods even if it failed the report, but you have to understand like how to read it. And like some products have different AQL levels. Like for example, an inflatable airbed might have, a higher AQL rate, like maybe 6 or 7%, because one pin or one sharp object can just damage and destroy that product. But then like other more common products have got a lower AQL level. So it's quite, and your inspection company will help you determine what is the AQL level of that particular product. And then what's also important to consider is that use that knowledge of the AQL levels to then claim returns from your manufacturer if you ever have any returns for your product. Because let's say you pass inspection, you ship all the goods and you sell them on Amazon, but then let's say you get like 7% of your goods returned to you. And like, I'm not talking about the fake returns, I'm talking about like the real returns. If you get like 7% real returns, you can publish that information, you can screenshot it, you can send it to your supplier and, hey, look, 100 of these, I ordered 100 of these, 7 of them came back returned. So therefore I need to claim, compensation for those 7 units because that's above the AQL level. Yeah. And then quite often what they'll do is they'll either refund you for those, or they will include 7 extra free pieces on your next order. So you can actually get the manufacturer to pay for all your returns if you understand your AQL levels.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sharon, you want to add anything here?
No, I just, as Kian was speaking, I was bringing up the AQL levels report that I've got in front of me. No, on point. Cool.
Testing your samples to industry and legal standards.
Yeah, so this is quite an important topic, right? Because a lot of people just think that the pre-shipment inspection is all they need to do, but you can also actually just test your products before that to make sure that they are fit for purpose. And there's 2 types of tests you should be looking at: that they're passing the legal standards and that they're passing the industry standards. Because a product like an iPhone charger will have legal standards that it's not supposed to blow up when you charge it in the plug socket. But like a coffee mug will not have legal standards, but it'll have industry standards, such as the coating should not melt when you add hot water to the coffee mug. So it's important for you to understand what these measures are, but you're not supposed to know that off the top of your head. You can contact similar QC companies like Intertech that I mentioned. They also do like the product testing as well as a pre-shipment inspection. And they can tell you, if you say, hey, I'm importing this product from China to Germany or China to the USA, they'll tell you for what market, what testing regulations you need to pass by legally and what ones they recommend for. And then what you can do is you can go to your manufacturer and say, look, these are the regulations I need to pass for. Do you have the certificates to pass these? And they might show you certificates of examples of products that they have met those criteria for. But remember, it's very important to know that that's for another brand that they've tested for, not your brand. By them showing that they can pass allows you to understand they're capable of passing, but you still need the documentation to show that they've passed for your brand. Because if you ever get called out by a retailer or Amazon or whatever for something not being fit for purpose, you can show that document to say, hey, this third-party QC company has inspected it, it passed the legal standards, therefore this product is fine. So that's always good to have in your back pocket. And depending on the type of item that it is, sometimes these tests can be quite cheap. Like for example, on backpacks, I test the strength of the shoulder straps and the stitching, and I apply 40 kilo weights to make sure that the shoulder straps don't break. I don't have to do that, but I do have it. So, it's always good to have these documents in your back pocket. And something like that maybe only costs like $80 to inspect, but something very technical like that they have to blow up and destroy might be like, several $1,000s. So once you start speaking to these companies, you can really understand what you want to test for and what you don't want to test for.
Yeah, you touched on a point about pre-shipment inspection because we're keeping it simple, but at a higher level, you're also checking materials, aren't you? There's inspections go in there, and then there's factory inspections, and that's a whole new conversation. Just related conversation. If you have random inspection, what percentage of the product is normally to be checked? First question. And do they do a general look over? Do you want to answer that one, Kian?
Yeah. So what was the question again? So
the percentage out of 100%, what gets inspected, and then is there an over, like a general? I think it's just a pick and look inspection as well.
So that's a good point. It completely depends on the size of the order, because if you've got like 1,000 units, or if you've got 100,000 units, if you have 1,000 units, you could ask them to check 20%, and checking 200 units would be like a mandate. So they kind of go by how many they can inspect in one mandate, because that's what you're paying for, like whatever it is, $180 to $300 for a mandate. But if you say that you want to check 20%, but it's for 100,000 units, that might take 17 days, and then that will be a very expensive inspection. So you can basically just stipulate, right, 3 mandates, what can you do? And they'll tell you, okay, we can inspect 2,500 out of your 100,000, and you might say, okay, that's enough. But and in a good way around that is that, like, what they do is they pick the random boxes. If the order has to be 100% complete before you arrange a pre-shipment inspection, it has to be ready to ship. They don't do it as they're making it. So when you have all those boxes ready, you take samples from like the 13th box, the 69th box, the 250th box, and it's completely random. So it's not like, oh, we've prepared these boxes for the inspection company and these are all going to pass. So for that reason, it doesn't matter if you have a smaller sample size, it's completely randomized. So you'll be able to spot any defects if they do occur.
Yeah, makes sense. Deepak here says, and I'll tell you a quick story, make sure for Japan you do a full inspection. I was
actually going to say that sometimes you should have a full inspection, so it's good you're saying this.
Yeah, so basically we launched a product in Japan about 3 years ago, and we did do an inspection. We'd moved suppliers. It was a problematic product. It took 6 months after to fix and deal with all the shit. But basically, we really struggled to get off in Japan. So I had like ACOS was like 2,500, and there was one search term for the market. There's no other search term, and then on desktop, it was at the bottom of the page. It never appeared at the top, so you'd have to scroll down. It was a fucking nightmare to deal with. And then that's when we started to go, okay, let's start doing some giveaways. So we converted our ads into Japanese, and we managed to rank the product, got it to number 7. And then all the complaints start coming in. Then all the photographs, the stitching and everything. It was a complete mess. We had to completely abort. So we set up in Japan, done all this around this product, done the inspection. The good thing about Japan with China, it's 7 days by sea. But it was a complete world of pain. We never ended up going back into Japan because it was such a mess to clear up. And that affected the production line on other orders. And the only thing that we can put it down to is that there's a possibility that after the inspection was done, the manufacturer, because he would order in all the materials from different locations, the zips and all this for this product, we think that before he shipped it, he did ship out some of the shitty products that didn't make it because he had to make a follow-up order to another territory for us. So they've come in, they've inspected, they've unwrapped them, I believe. He swapped some of them out for the crappy ones, put them into the Japan order, finished off the order for the UK and the EU, send that off. And then, it was just a complete nightmare. So, same about Japan. And Japanese customers are like German customers. They're very fussy. They want high quality. They're very, what's the word? They don't like to leave reviews, and then don't like to give 5-star reviews either. So in Japan, if you look at, for instance, I've done a few years ago, I don't know if I got the slides, there's probably somewhere, there might be Global Sources 2017, I've done launching in Japan. But what I show in there is to show you that you can have like a salad spinner. In Japan, there might be only one image up of the salad spinner with 30 reviews, but in the US it's got 3,000 reviews. And then I used the garlic press as an example. Might be 50 reviews and 4 images, but in the US 5,000 reviews. And so it just gives you an example there. The Japanese won't sit there and go, oh yeah, let's give everyone a 5-star. They've always feel embarrassed if they're going to leave one. So that's also a struggle to get reviews. So it's not just the inspection that can, if you do inspect, it can still go wrong as well. And you've got to look at, if it's a new product, the cost of a launch. So even though we got that product inspected and we got done over by the manufacturer and had a 6-month clear up, it still costs us a fortune and time. It's not even the money. So even sometimes when you do get an inspection, like you said, you can't trust it. But yeah.
Was that a first time working with that manufacturer?
No. It wasn't the first time. We'd worked with them a few times, but we did have some quality issues. I think what the problem was is that this was a small outfit when we used that guy. And then when we expanded and said, okay, we want you to send to the EU, we want to send to the UK, and we also want you to send to Japan. Suddenly he was like, he will say yes to everything because no one likes to say no. And he bit off more than he can chew. That's what I think it'll put it down to.
I've got a supplier. I just put in an order we sell a type of product for women after they give birth, and it's got an adhesive to it. And we just made an order like maybe 2 weeks ago. And the supplier, I wish I was while we've been speaking, I was trying to see if I could show you guys the thing without revealing the product, but I can't. Anyway, my supplier sent me a message and she said, Sharon, we're really sorry, but there's something wrong with the adhesive. Same supplier as the last time, but it's a totally different product. And like that's something about also having that type of relationship with your suppliers as well, because it's not, if you guys can say this as well, it's not to be taken for granted that I have a supplier who lets me know that there's like a fuck up with the product. That usually doesn't happen. But she knows that if I get bad reviews and that there's going to be an issue there, like I'm going to ditch her and find someone else. So it's in her best interest to let me know. But that also, like, that's not to be taken for granted that she even sends me that.
Cool. Deepak says, selling Japan for 3 years. It's true. Japanese like it if you have a lot of social proof. Abu says, Danny, yes, it was Cross-Border Summit in April 2018. So that's my launching in Japan. So you might find that on YouTube somewhere if you want to have a look at that. Andrea says, so it's like Sharon says, sometimes you do not know until the end what you need to test for. How do you then establish the conditions for a failed inspection with your supplier? Like smell, for example, never crossed my mind. So did not put it under the failed inspection condition. That's cool because you can get unraveled here, can't you? Something that you would consider a foul is just you didn't realize it was on the list, you know?
But so, that's kind of why you pay your inspection companies, though, because they help you find out these sort of things that we didn't necessarily think to ask for. And if you don't have eyes and ears in the factory, either yourself or a member of your team, then inspection companies will bring this to your attention. Yeah.
Sharon?
I've personally not been in a situation where I've had an inspection fail on something ridiculous. But for this specific example with the smell, it wasn't in any sort of PO or in any sort of agreement, but they just like accepted it and redid the order. That's what happened here. But I haven't worked with brand new suppliers for like, I think over a year and a half. Most of my suppliers, I've had a long-term relationship with them is the truth. So I haven't yet been in a situation that I can remember where I've had something like this happen. But if they want your business, they're going to do, like, they won't let you leave unhappy. That's in my experience. I don't know if like what you guys have to say about that, but I've worked with terrible, horrible suppliers in the past. It took me a long time to find my handful of like perfect suppliers that
well, it just becomes, it's like you done your first YouTube video, me doing the first seller sessions. You just shit at what you do at the very beginning. You learn, don't you? And if you don't learn, you're out of business. Joe says, does anyone not do an inspection during the production to avoid 10,000 units produced, then find something wrong? What do you think? I think what we're saying here, Joe, is that I talked about flashing inspections or aborting early. Kian?
Yeah, this is a really important point, and something I forgot to mention is that prior to inspections, you have to have a very solid sample process. And what I always do, I go through 3 samples before confirming any order, right? You have your counter sample. Your counter sample is like your first one, like the idea product. It might be your competitor sample, or it might be a sample you sent to them. You want to make some changes to it. Anyway, the manufacturer develops a sample that you want, and then you get what's called your pre-production sample. That's a sample that you're like, okay, this is what I want to order. You've made all my changes. It's the right color. It's got my logo on it. I am now confirming this for production. And then they go into production. They manufacture your 10,000 units, as you say. And then they send you a pre-shipment sample, which is a sample from the actual production. Now, what you have to do is compare the pre-production sample with the pre-shipment sample side by side, and they have to be like for like. They have to be exactly the same. And if there's any problems, or if there's any differences or discrepancies between those samples, then you don't go ahead and either pay your supplier or arrange the inspection until it's actually been checked. But you checking and testing your pre-production sample before the supplier goes into manufacturing is what prevents you having any problems when you inspect those final 10,000 units.
Do you want to give people quickly just the names? There's various names for different stages of samples, isn't there? There's production sample. What else is there? There's 3 or 4.
Yes. So I just go by 3. Your counter sample, which is your first one, your pre-production sample, which is what you've confirmed for them to go into production, and then your pre-shipment sample, which is essentially what they've made. Some people have the gold, the bronze, silver, and gold. I just go counter, pre-production, and pre-shipment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we kind of should get to this because we've been asked this a few times. Let's kind of help people understand of how they should put something together, because it's a chicken and egg thing. You just don't know how it's going to pan out. But what can we do to accurately prepare? You can't with accuracy because you don't know. There's too many variables. Prepare the specification sheet before contacting the supplier. When starting a new product, sometimes there seems to be details which we're learning while we're talking to suppliers, which is true. Have you guys done this? You've gone and sourced the product. You think you know what's going on. Like, you think you know a lot about the product. And as you do more and more research and the different factories that you speak to ask more and more questions, more and more stuff ends up on your list, doesn't it? So this is a good point, what he's saying now. So what do you do? What is your process to document all of this? Like a list, is there a hit list of 20? Do you do research on the net? Do you ask the suppliers probing questions to build that list, or do you ask them for a specification list? Sorry, I'll leave you room to answer the question there.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that, like, again, you have to sort of educate yourself on your product, because like, and you do this by talking to many different suppliers before you actually go to the supplier that you want to go to. So for example, if you want to do a product that you have no idea about the specification of that particular product, well, ask the first supplier to send you a specification sheet. And then they'll be like, okay, this has got like lead materials, it's got aluminium, these are the dimensions, these are the fabrics. And then start asking your questions to that first supplier to be like, all right, why do people take nylon instead of polyester here? Why are you doing double stitching here? Like, why are you using this thickness of diameter of steel? And like, yes, that's not the supplier you should be working with, because you've just showed your complete lack of experience, but you're using one supplier to build up all your knowledge on that product. So that when you go to your next supplier and ask for the quotation, you say, hey, by the way, we need to have like this thickness of aluminium and this polyester material, because for the German market, we require this standard. And then your next supplier is going to be like, oh, they know exactly what they want. They must be an experienced buyer. So like, don't, so that's why, like, you know, on Alibaba, maybe ask like 5 or 10 suppliers all the questions that you want before you go and actually reach out to the good suppliers. And likewise at the Canton Fair, you have conversations face to face with like 5 or 10 different suppliers, and then pick from there which one you actually want to work with. But you learn from those exchanges. Exactly.
And one of the things I tried to do, and it failed miserably, I thought I'd be really clever by creating a spreadsheet with all these questions in. And I thought, if I can share this spreadsheet with the factories, they will go ahead and complete all the fields on the spreadsheet, and then I could cut and paste into one long spreadsheet and compare the answers to all the factories. But they never do it, because they never fully answers. They stay very vague. Like when you do like a long question list, it's like too much too soon, isn't it? So you end up getting a little bit of information here and a response here, and then you keep asking them saying, did you get the spreadsheet? Could you complete the questions on the sheet? And then they'd only answer another bit. So it's almost like what you said, is that you almost want to use the first 5 or 10 factories as your learning process about the product and the needs of that product, so that people then take you seriously if they go, well, we're not going to pull the wool over this person's eyes, because they obviously know what they're talking about.
Exactly.
When bundling, this is an interesting one. When bundling, if so, one factory finished earlier, do you do inspection straight away or wait until the end of the whole production? I guess you want to have separate inspections. Yeah.
This is exactly what I said earlier that we should speak about when you have more than one supplier, like when you create a bundle. So I specifically will have you could have 3 inspections, but each supplier will have an inspection. So if I'm bundling product A and product B, and let's say supplier A is sending the product to supplier B and they're doing the final bundle, the product will not leave supplier A until I've had an inspection in suppliers A. They will send it to supplier B, and I will also have an inspection there as well. So you have 2. It depends on the product. You may even have three different ones at that time.
Yeah.
But you have an inspection in every warehouse when you're bundling.
That makes sense. I'm curious that we're coming up to the hour point here. Let's go into NDAs and NNN. Explain what both documents are, Kian, if you don't mind, and then we'll unpack it.
Yeah, sure. So your NDA is your non-disclosure agreement, and your NNN is non-disclosure, non-use, and non-circumvention. And so I think Sharon and I have like different views on this because of the different sort of nature of customers that we work with. And like for me, I don't like getting my suppliers. I mean, with all the orders that I've done, I've only ever got a supplier to sign one NNN document. And I don't like getting them to sign those documents because, you're showing a bit of a lack of trust to say, hey, I want you to manufacture my order, but I don't trust you that you're not going to show this to anyone else. So I want you to sign this document. Whereas I've kind of built all my factories based on strong relationships, and strong relationships is built on trust. And I know they don't want to screw me over because I'm placing good orders and my business is growing. So I care a lot more about the relationship rather than the legal formalities, because if they want to copy a product at any time, they can. Like, I think one of these documents is just a piece of...
If you don't mind me saying, you look at Sony, you look at Apple, right? You look at Nike, got the best legal team in the world, but their shit still gets knocked off in China. What hope have we got?
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
this is where Kian and I don't...
I've shaken Sharon now. Look, I knew that.
No, I'll tell you what, because Kian and I met... Kian and I met because of, and I'm so thankful that this happened because Kian and I have become really good friends since then, because of a client that I have that was inventing a product, and NNN was really important to us. And Kian, the difference, and Kian and I were speaking about this, the difference between us is I've never been in China. I've been sourcing for half of my life from China, and I've never been in China, and I've done pretty okay. But the fact that I've never been in China, and that we were supposed to go to China this year, obviously it's not going to happen. But the point is that I was saying to Kian, a lot of the people watching us are not going to go to China. You don't have to fly to China in order to do online business. It's great if you can, but you don't have to. So for the people who don't, it does take a longer time for us to build that trust with the Chinese. So I specifically, and I'm sorry if there's anyone here who's specifically a Chinese supplier, I don't trust anyone, doesn't matter who you are, until you prove to me that I can trust you. And I will, with every single supplier when I come in with a new product, have an NNN done. I use the Alkabili for it. I have an NNN done, and I will spend how much money I need for that. So in saying that, if you have some sort of patent design or whatever in America, which is not that expensive for you to have, yes, they can't use your exact design in America or whatever it may be, but they can still sell your product to different types of to other countries, etc. And not only that, sometimes when you're working, like I could be working with 2 different suppliers before I make the final decision which supplier I'm going with. I will have an NNN done with both of them because I don't 100% know which one I'm going, and I've gone and put a lot of time and effort into that specific design. So I get so Kian and I, Kian's all about the trust because he's physically there a lot of the time, like most of the time. He's physically there, and he's built up this trust with them where I will trust them after a few years, but it's going to take time for me to get to that point, if that makes sense. And I put them through a lot of tests, my suppliers.
Yeah. So it's context, basically. Kian's trust comes from being there, a friendly face on the ground. You won't go to China, or you don't go to China. Therefore, that's your wave of protection. That's your new layer,
If you have a Chinese entity, you don't need to worry. But I don't. So that's why I have an NNN done.
Okay, this question got asked earlier and I missed it. Sorry, guys. Speaking of trust, could you guys talk about creating a contract with the factory? Is there a fill in the blank somewhere I could start with? Or we've been using invoices and product specifications so far. Any insight and appreciated. Thanks. Either
Kian,
guys.
me or you go first, I'll go after.
So I've got like a purchase order template that I use, which is basically got the purchase order basic information on it. But with the purchase order, I always send a terms and conditions document, and the terms and condition document stipulates, like, you know, the carton dimensions, the printing on the cartons. But in there, it's also got a few things that says, like, this is the delivery date of the order as per the PO. If you're over 14 days late on the delivery date, then you have to air freight 30% of the goods at your own expense. So like, and they have to sign that with their company CHOP, and there's a few other terms in there as well, so that I know that I'm protected, that I'm not going to get my goods like 1 month later than we've agreed, and there's like consequences as a result of that. So that's just something that I've built up over time, and from like orders going bad or whatever, I've just added things in. But I wouldn't say that there's like a template online that you can access, but it's just like trial and error. You add in things that you like with your order, and then you get the factory to sign that on every single order.
Even if you do have, look, I've got a purchase order sample in my unit section of the group. I have every file that you need in the unit section of my group, but I write there that it doesn't actually mean jack shit. That's the truth, unless it's in Chinese and it's signed by Chinese lawyers.
Or it's
it doesn't actually stamped. Yeah, it doesn't actually mean anything. So a lot of the people watching us are going to be working through Alibaba and trade assurance and things like that. What I recommend, because I don't work with Alibaba anymore because I don't need to, but what I recommend for newbies to do if they're going to be working through trade assurance is to have a purchase order of some sort as your, like, so that you know what are the things that you need to have them agree upon, and then have them, because all the communication has got to be through Alibaba, have them upload your agreement from their side where it's signed, and that's only going to be good enough for trade assurance. Like, you can't sue them or anything on that, but that's only going to cover you with Alibaba, if that makes sense. Did I explain that good enough?
Yep. Joanne's left a few messages here, all related. So with the NNN, they sign when? Before a discussion, any modification ideas, or when placing the order in the purchase order? The second thing she says, the purchase order agreement I have for those terms, they tend to not respect them. And what she's saying here is not enforceable. They still share packaging ideas, etc., with others. What's your take on that?
The only thing that will protect you is the NNN. If they share your package ideas and things like that, first of all, I personally test the supplier beforehand, and I ask them questions about other sellers and things like that. If they openly share with me what other people are doing, I already know that I can't trust them not to share my stuff. And in my experience, like, I know I've tested my suppliers in the past, and I know that they won't give me information on my supplier, exactly on my competitors. They'll do their best to try and hide it. I find it in the end, but they do their best. But the only thing that will protect you, from my experience, and I work with, in my opinion, like the best lawyers that work in China. In my experience, the only thing that protects you is the NNN.
Mm-hmm.
Danny, do you agree on that?
Yes, I do. I'm kind of in Kian's group in the sense that there's a level of trust, but then I don't like.
It takes time to build it.
Yeah, it takes time to build it, and I only now source one product from China. The rest is done in the UK. And that one product, we work with a sourcing agent, which is another question that come up earlier on, because I know Kian's, that's not his thing, but that's where, you know, you agree to disagree. I have him to do that. He takes a percentage of production. Originally, once he went through the stage of sourcing the factory, he owns a relationship. I get that. I bought into that. Don't have a problem with that at all. But so my trust is with him, and he's a British guy based in Iwu. And I've met him plenty of times, so my trust is in him and not the factory. Now it's relied on him to be in the controlling seat to make sure he's on the ground, which he is, and with his Chinese wife, who obviously speaks the language, knows that when they're going to the factory, we've got most points covered, but you're never 100% protected. Side B says, sorry, Kian, how many times have you had to call on the 14 days clause, and has the factory sent 30% by air? Sorry, and we'll get back to you in a moment, Sharon.
Yeah, no, so it's happened a few times, and I have enforced it, and I've enforced it even when I haven't had to. Like, if a 14-day delay would have been okay, but I enforced it just to show that this is serious, and because I have customers in the UK, like retailers, like Argos and Tesco and Aldi, that if you're a day late, they'll fine you for a percentage of the order. And so if anyone's ever late with my delivery dates, then I do enforce that, just to say, like, don't mess around. And if they do get stung hard because they have to pay for 30% air freight, then they're never going to make that mistake again with me, because they know the consequences of it. So yeah, I have enforced it, and it doesn't happen very often, but because you say that, they're going to be a lot more likely. Like, let's say, for example, they've got another order on the production line. They're going to take that other customer's off and put yours on to make sure that they ship yours out on time, because you have that clause in your contract. But if you never had that clause, then they're just going to delay it, and they're like, oh, well, there's no consequences of that delay. Look, if they decide not to air freight it, like, you're still in the same situation you were before. But at least if you have it, that's going to get them on their toes to always meet the delivery date.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, going back to you, Sharon, I cut you off. Apologies.
I was just going to say, with your sourcing company, the guy, the UK guy, though, he probably has a Chinese entity, which is
he does. Yeah. No,
yeah.
he just.
So that's the difference between when you're working as someone who doesn't have a Chinese entity, when you're working with a supplier without a middleman, when you don't have a sourcing agent, and you're trying to. That's why, because I just want to say, it's important to trust your suppliers. If you don't trust someone, you can't work with them.
But you see, for the same question, we come up and we're respectful for each other's answers. Our predicaments are different. So it's never going to give you the same answer, because Kian doesn't agree with using sourcing agents. I do it out of convenience, and I'd rather pay experts to do certain things so that I have multiple businesses to run. I try and work on the businesses and not in the businesses, right? And so that's why I pay people that I trust to do that. But so the answer to that question, there's 3 different answers from 3 different people who have 3 different approaches, right? You won't go to China, right? You won't go to China. That's your protection. He loves being in China, which is crazy. I don't know how many people can just go out there and live there for 6 months, and I can't get on with it. I've done China a few times. I've had terrible experiences, like with internet connections and stuff like that. I love Chinese people, got some great friends, but I don't enjoy staying there for long periods of times out of my natural habitat, right? But so my point is, there's the answer is from 3 different people for 3 different reasons. So yeah.
Cool.
And to the user,
Go on.
Oh, sorry, and to the listeners, you just have to listen to all 3 approaches and see which fits for you, because none of us are right or wrong. You know what I mean? You just
there is no right or wrong here.
Yeah.
Okay, we should start to think wrapping soon, but there is one last part of this call. We need to talk about payment and payment protection. I know we've alluded to this on the call before, but we are in a situation with COVID-19. Factories working on little margins and stuff, and they could be the best factories in the world, but they could disappear, unfortunately. So
yeah, the thing I wanted to mention with this is, like, COVID or no COVID, because we're talking about like quality checks and inspections and stuff like that, there's some quality checks you have to do with payments as well. And it's very important that once you've placed a few orders with a factory and you have regular payments going through, be mindful of payment scams that can happen, and they've happened to me before as well. That if you ever get an email request, before you're about to make a payment, if you ever get an email from your factory, from the employee or the boss or whatever, saying that we've had to change our bank details, now pay your order into this account.
Yeah.
The number one thing you should do whenever that happens is phone your supplier and phone your boss and say, did you want me to change the bank account details? Because what's happened to us a few times is that our suppliers have had their email accounts hacked. And then when they get hacked, they're reading the emails, and they're waiting for that time to say, right, we're about to arrange the payment. And then when they see that email, that's when they interject and say, okay, pay our new bank account details. And then they hope to receive the account before the money before they find out, which is why you don't just send a WeChat message, because you don't know what could happen there as well. Phone them and say, did you want us to change the bank account details? And the other thing that's happened as well, which is quite bad, was that sometimes the employees in that company, the sales staff, are about to leave the company, and they say, hey, by the way, we've requested that you pay into this account, and that's just a bank account that the employee of the company have just set up on the site. So that's why you have to phone the boss. And, on previous podcast episodes, we always talking about the boss and the relationship and stuff like that. That's why this stuff is important, because you have to have a direct line of communication with the decision maker and the boss of these companies, because they can even get screwed over by their own employees. And then and that could leave you in a very tough situation. So I think, like, as a seller, you have to ask yourself the question, do I have a direct line of communication with the factory boss that I'm buying from? And if you're buying from a sourcing agent, then you probably don't. And do you know the boss's name? Can you pick up the phone right now and give him a call? And if you don't, then you need to create that line of communication in case problems like this arise.
Yeah. Sharon, any parting words before we go?
I really, really, really quickly just want to add to what CB just said, the question that you put here on the thing. That's not 100% true. I have a client who took the jade roller. I've got it here, so it was the first thing that came to my mind. The normal jade roller, and she made it electronic. And she didn't have the money to have a patent on it, which was very unfortunate. And she was the first one who created that. And then it wasn't flying off the shelves yet, but within 2 months, they had sent it to everyone else. So it's not 100% that they're not going to copy you until you're working on your next product. If you've got a really good idea and you've differentiated a product 100%, first time you're working with that supplier, they could copy you from the beginning.
Yeah. Ben Valent says, experience that scam Kian cost $100,000.
Wow, it's a bad one.
There you go. I feel sorry for you. Yeah.
Cool. Let me tell you guys what we've got coming up on the show this week. So Yale's back tomorrow. We're going to talk fighting hijackers on Amazon from a legal perspective. Then Thursday's part 4 of Shopifying off Amazon. Friday, we've got awesomers.com versus Seller Sessions with myself and Steve Simonson. Saturday, we've got Women of Amazon in-depth profile with Michelle Aventon. Sunday is Mindset Sunday, and we're going to do Law of Attraction, Pay It Forward with Lee Rand Hirschkorn. And Sharon, before you go, you are one of the team that is appearing at Branded by Women as well. What will you be covering?
I am covering PPC.
Not just PPC, but I went through it. Like you've done all the edits yourself. It's like 40 minutes long. It's very in depth on the more basic end of PPC, but it's a very in-depth review for people out there who want to check that out. So go and grab a free ticket, brandedbywomen.com. We went live yesterday. Any technical problems, let us know, because no launches go normal on the first day. So we're 2 days in. Tickets are going well. But yeah, looking forward to having you there. I look forward to getting you guys back next week or the week after. We'll do another session. We'll just come up with some content. Jason says, great conversation, guys. Some very good points and perspectives. Thanks for that. Andreas says, yes, that happened to me. Lucky it seemed so weird I asked. Who else have we got here? We've missed off the list. Joanne said about packaging. She said, yes, agreed on testing. That's how I've seen other packages. And we also got from Facebook user, thanks for answering my questions. Okay, I think that's us done for the day, guys. Yeah. So you have a wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you both soon. Guys, stay home, stay safe. Hopefully we'll get some news in the next couple of weeks to see if we get let out of lockdown. But in the meantime, stay safe, stay home. Much love. Take care. See you tomorrow, 4 p.m. BST.
See you guys. Bye.